I think I do welcome the bill. I am glad that it does provide assistance for people who need it in terms of exercising their decision-making capacity. I think it does that to a certain extent. I'm glad that we're ratifying the Convention on International Protection of Adults by this, and I think we would all welcome if we were in a position to sign in the UN Convention on Human Rights for the Disabled. I just want to maybe in the limited time available mention a couple of issues. I think a number of people have been in touch with me and probably other deputies as well in relation to this legislation, maybe raising some concerns in relation to the area of power of attorney and increasing their powers from the standpoint that it may undermine the rights of the individual, when in actual fact what the legislation is designed to do is actually to enhance the rights of an individual, and how we get that balance right I think will be important when it comes out of committee stage. There were also some very good points I believe made by organisations like Age Action, who highlighted the issue of restraint, detention and deprivation of liberty, particularly with elderly citizens, which is something that if we all live long enough we are bound to be, and would require the protection of this bill. So in general I think the bill is a step in the right direction in terms of protecting people at a time when they're at their most vulnerable, but we do need to be balanced. I mean, it's not just a question of legislation. We also need to look at the resources that go behind that issue. I think the idea of an appointment of a public guardian is a good idea, provided that it's open to scrutiny and accountability. And we have to be honest, transparency and accountability are not issues that we do well in general in Ireland, and I think the safeguards have to be rigorously pursued. I welcome the change in language that the bill provides. I think that is a good thing to move away from stigmatising people that previous legislation did. But behind it all, I think our guiding principle has to be that decision-making is not a straightforward black and white issue, that degrees of assistance may be required at different times, and the bill has to be, have a flexibility in that, and the guiding principle should be, and I think strives to be, supporting a person's decision-making at each of those stages. I think mechanisms like advanced healthcare directives are very good and imminently sensible. I mean, everybody thinks it's totally logical that we do wills to decide what happens to our goods and property after we die. So what happens to our bodies if our health deteriorates and we're not in a position to make that decision is something that is imminently sensible, as long as it does truly reflect our actual decision. And how you get that balance is the difficult thing. There have been horrendous cases exposed in Britain where patients were in essence condemned to an early death because of do not resuscitate orders being signed in without their behalf. Indeed, we've had institutions here shut down by the HSE because of a lack of clarity of the permission given in relation to do not resuscitate orders and so on. So I do think there needs to be an investigation there. But if we're talking about really protecting vulnerable citizens and elderly citizens, then we need to look at protecting them in the community and in the home as well. And I do see a discrepancy between maybe some of the lofty aspirations and comparing that, for example, with cutbacks in home health provision and so on, because, you know, there has been a lot of evidence to say that somebody's health and decision-making could deteriorate when they're removed from their family home and into a care setting, that they tend to do better in the family home. So really, if we're to assist in decision-making, it should start by protecting people in the home and allowing them to stay there for as long as possible. I do say that the Age Action in particular have highlighted a disconnect between legislation and reality. And I think that's something we have to be very careful of in this legislation, because some of our existing legislation didn't protect service users, for example, in nursing homes and so on. The scandals of Mulross and obviously Lees Cross years ago found many of them wanting. Obviously, the HICWA report into Mulross cited persistent failings of the Health Act of 2007, so the concerns of Age Action are well made. Now, we could say at least they were found out and that organisation was shut down, but it does require constant attention and so on. One of the issues in the brief time really that I'd like to highlight is the issue of restraints and so on. And for example, I recently had a constituent who was on to me about the manner in which her elderly aunt was treated in a unit linked to the Mater Hospital. Now, this woman wasn't mentally incapacitated. She had her full faculties, but she was in a locked ward where she couldn't leave. And in essence, her liberty was in that instance taken from her because the control of the automatic door was behind the nurse's station, and she had to ask permission to leave if she wanted to vacate that unit. Now, her family felt that this was demeaning to her dignity, her family contact, and that her liberty was curtailed. In essence, it was an environmental restraint. She made inquiries to the HSC. We made repeated inquiries as well and didn't really get a satisfactory response, because we were told that although that organisation adhered towards a restraint-free environment, it wasn't officially a nursing home, so therefore, even though it was linked to the Mater Hospital, so therefore wasn't covered by this policy. So I think we need to take account of this. A restraint policy has to cover all healthcare settings and not just care homes, and I think that those rules should also apply to persons residing in the community as well as persons residing in a nursing home and so on.